All right, so this is going to be another AP Gov review. We are going to start with the president today. I'll probably get through about half of it. And then the other half tomorrow. We'll get through the bureaucracy, the judiciary, all our Unit 3 stuff, required docs, and then we'll be good to go. Just a reminder, you guys are 1 week out from the AP government exam. So it is this time next week, Monday. Okay, so the president, the bully pulpit, right? So this thing, in no particular order, just alphabetical order. The bully pulpit, it just refers to the fact that an advantage the president has is how much media attention they get, all right? So think about the fact that Trump right now is able to do these press briefings almost on a daily basis. That's an advantage the president has. It can put pressure on Congress to work with them. So again, bully pulpit, that just means the president can wield a lot of power with the fact that they get a lot of media attention. All right, the president's cabinet, this is the heads of those very massive bureaucratic agencies like the Department of Agriculture, the Department of State, the Department of Defense. The president appoints the heads of those agencies. They become part of the president's cabinet in addition to the vice president and attorney general. They advise the president, they meet with the president regularly, and then they run the heads of these agencies. President's chief of staff is the president's usually one of their closest advisors. They're going to manage the day-to-day operations of the White House. They are not appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. They just simply, it's somebody the president chooses to work for them. They're going to manage that West Wing. They're going to manage the White House staff that oversees all that information, all those people that come through the White House on a daily basis. Commander-in-Chief, that's a really kind of big concept, right? That's one of the most important constitutional or formal powers of the president. Remember, we don't refer to the president's powers in the Constitution as expressed. That would be referring to Congress. When we refer to the president's powers in the Constitution, we say the president's formal powers or constitutional powers. President as commander-in-chief, you could make an argument that one of the reasons that the presidency has grown into what they refer to as this imperial presidency, right? The fact that the president is perhaps more powerful than the framers intended is the president's power as commander-in-chief. Think about it, right? The president can unilaterally make the decision about whether or not to use nuclear weapons. Take Truman, for example. So as commander-in-chief, the president makes key military decisions. That is a very important power of the presidency. It is something they have tried to rein in, or Congress has tried to rein in a little bit, right? Think about that War Powers Act, right? They're trying to rein in the president's power as commander-in-chief. Okay, a lot of foreign policy, a lot of the responsibility is thrust onto the president. That makes sense. You'd think you'd want foreign policy done by your head of state, done by one person. If it was done by Congress, that could make it confusing and kind of chaotic. So the Constitution really thrusts the responsibility of foreign policy on the president. Executive agreements are an example of an inherent power. It's not in the Constitution, right? So the president makes treaties. We know that's a formal or constitutional power. Well, the president also, because the Constitution thrusts that power on them, they can make agreements with other heads of state and get around, circumvent that Senate advice and consent power, right? The Senate confirms the treaties. Well, if the president just wants to make a deal with another head of state and get around the Senate, they can just create an executive agreement. The Senate is not brought into that in any way, shape, or form. The limitations of it, though, are the fact that that's only going to last as long as the president's term. Future presidents do not have to honor executive agreements because they're not law. They're just a deal with another head of state. So, for example, Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy said, hey, we'll take our missiles out of Turkey if you'll take yours out of Cuba. There you go, an executive agreement. Senate was not brought into that in any way, shape, or form. Executive office of the president, I'm going to skip this. I'm not worried about this. This is just simply the National Security Council's part of the executive office of the president, as is the president's Office of Management and Budget. I just cannot see how that would show up in an FRQ. Come Monday, it's just something that is part of that whole bureaucratic piece. The president makes the budget and submits it to Congress. That's done through the executive office of the president. The National Security Council is considered a part of the executive office of the president as well. Not gonna spend too much time there. Okay, executive orders. I think this is really important. I could see something like this showing up in an argumentation essay. right? Executive orders is just the fact that the president is over the bureaucracy. And because the president is the boss of the bureaucracy, the president can tell the bureaucracy what to do. And when the president issues an executive order, it carries the weight of law. It's not the president making a law, it just carries the weight of law. It is a way that the president can circumvent Congress and try and get policies the president wants. All right. So, for example, right, Congress in the 1950s and late 40s was not going to integrate the military. You were not going to see a whole lot of civil rights legislation in the 40s and 50s. Truman wanted to integrate the military. So Truman just simply said, well, I am the commander-in-chief of the military. I'm going to issue an executive order. It's me, the executive, ordering you, a bureaucratic agency, the military, to integrate. So it carries the weight of law. It is not a law, but it is a way for the president to get policies they want. Executive privilege, this is the fact that the president can withhold information from Congress. Proponents of executive privilege will say that, if we want the president privy to the most sensitive information out there, then they should not have to reveal their sources nor reveal all the information they get, because we want the president privy to the most sensitive information out there. The honeymoon period is the fact that when we elect a new president, when we get that president-elect, that president usually comes into office particularly popular. People are willing to say, okay, let's see what this person is going to do. There hasn't been any scandals yet or anything like that. So presidents tend to be particularly popular at the beginning of their presidency. However, what we saw with that chart in class is that over time we see the president's approval ratings tend to go down. All right, especially since probably Kennedy. Okay, so in the last 60 years or so, a trend would be that typically with most presidents, they leave office with less approval than they came in with. Imperial presidency, I talked about that. That was just simply the fact that we've seen this office of the president, right, as created in Article 2 of the Constitution. We've seen the growth of the presidency. Some critics argue more so than what the Constitution allows. Why? That role as commander-in-chief has grown. The whole bully pulpit, the media attention the president receives, these executive orders and such. Okay, so some people argue that the president is operating above and beyond what the Constitution has provided. Okay, I'm going to stop there today. Tomorrow, I'm going to get through the rest of the presidency. I'm going to get through the bureaucracy as well. In one day, I'm going to try and knock out the judiciary for you guys because I really do want to focus a lot on the Unit 3 civil liberties and civil rights stuff. I think that's really important.